2.5% in each of the last 2 years. A union spokesman says they're willing to go back to the bargaining table at any time. About 70 employees who have been on strike against Johnstown's Carville Leather Company for 8 months get their turn to vote tomorrow on a tentative contract. The main issue in the prolonged walkout has been recognition of a different union. Bob Lawson found some pessimism among the strikers he spoke with today.
There were only 4 people on the picket line at the Carville plant today. None of them were very optimistic that the end of the 8.5-month ordeal is in sight, despite the tentative agreement.
Well, I don't know. We've had so many disappointments in the past that I'm really not optimistic about it at all.
Well, I agree with Rich. I'm not very optimistic about it. I'd like to see the strike come to an end. I mean, we've been out here for almost 9 months, spent the winter out here, and that's a long time. But like he said, we've had so many disappointments with the postponements of the hearing and whatnot. I'm not getting my hopes up at this point.
Union officials would not tell us what was in the contract proposal, but during a raucous meeting of striking glove workers, ICTWU official John Rich said that while the Carville workers got the union recognition they wanted and would get their old jobs back, they were not getting a wage hike or even a wage freeze. The tentative agreement calls for a wage cut. Bob Lawson, TV10 Action News, Gloversville.
What kind of impact have these labor troubles had on the glove cities? I posed that question to Gloversville Mayor Eugene Reppenhagen during a live interview on our 6 o'clock news.
They have been quite devastating. We've had a bad time with strikes this past year with the tanneries and now with the glove workers. And economically, it really hurts. So we're not a really prosperous area to begin with. And when these people making the wages that they do are out of work for a week, it's quite devastating to the local economy.
President Reagan maintains the national economy would benefit if a lower minimum wage was enacted for youths between the ages of 16 and 19. The president sought support for the proposal today during a White House meeting with members of the American Retail Federation.
Something I've had to rule out already is...
The president used this meeting at the White House with the American Retail Federation to push one of his most controversial proposals, a summertime sub-minimum wage for young people.
More and more people recognize the problem the minimum wage causes for our unskilled young people. Our Youth Employment Opportunity Wage Bill will give a much-needed boost to those looking for their first summertime job, and it deserves your active support.
But the proposal by no means has the support of organized labor. The AFL-CIO is sharply critical, warning that many businesses will throw older workers out of jobs and hire teenagers at the sub-minimum rate of $2.50 an hour instead of the current minimum wage of $3.35. In defending his proposal, however, the president says that studies show that every time the minimum wage goes up, so does teenage unemployment. Mike Von Fremd, ABC News, the White House.
The president did not get all that he wanted from the House of Representatives this evening as the congressman approved a compromise MX missile package. We get details in this late report from ABC's Vic Ratner.
The heated and sometimes bitter debate on the House floor went on for more than 7 hours, with opponents of the MX, such as Sander Levin of Michigan, warning that the new missile is not only useless, but too expensive as well.
But there's no price worth the cost of keeping MX. The longer any governmental program goes on, the harder it is to terminate it. For MX, the time to terminate it is right now.
For the second year in a row, it was a group of moderate Democrats, led by Tennessee Congressman Albert Gore, who saved the MX, telling their colleagues that to kill it now would be to send the wrong signal to the Russians.
The raw fact of the matter is that if the Congress of the United States cancels the MX, because the Soviets have suspended the arms control process, we shall have given the Soviets for free what ought to be available to them only in a fair exchange of values.
The effort to wipe the MX out completely failed by just 6 votes. The final compromise authorizes only 15 of the 40 new missiles that the president wanted next year, and hedges even those with restrictions which will hold up their manufacture at least until next April. Vic Ratner, ABC News at the Capitol.
A Marine Accused to serve with the American peacekeeping force in Beirut is facing a court-martial at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. Corporal Alfred Griffin says that he went AWOL when he got his orders to ship out to Lebanon because he's a black Muslim, and claims his religious beliefs won't allow him to take up arms against his fellow Muslims. The 22-year-old soldier was once a member of the White House Honor Guard. If convicted, Griffin faces a 6-month sentence, a bad conduct discharge, reduction in rank, and a loss of pay. In the Saratoga County village of Schuylerville, there was a disciplinary hearing dealing with the chief of police. The chief, Jeffrey Levy, is charged with various counts of misconduct and making sexual advances toward a woman he ticketed for speeding. Aaron Shepard was at the hearing. Arnie, what happened?
Well, Marcy, we should point out that tonight's proceeding was just that, a hearing on a number of charges against Schuylerville's only police officer, Chief Jeffrey Levy. The hearing opened with Schuylerville Mayor John Sherman being called to the stand. And immediately, Stephen Coffey, the attorney for Chief Levy, went on the attack.
You don't like the mayor, do you? You don't like the chief? Chief, I'm sorry.
There's nothing that says I never disliked him. As a matter of fact, I've never stated that to anybody.
Well, I didn't ask you whether you stated it to anyone. I asked you whether you disliked him.
No, I don't.
From there, Coffey systematically discredited the allegations against the chief, pointing out a mix-up on dates the mayor had put down, as well as the charge that Chief Levy had taken radios, which the mayor then admitted was a single radio that was later turned over to the Schuylerville Emergency Squad. But the testimony that everyone was waiting for came from Breezy Ann Humiston of Fort Edward, who alleged that last December, Chief Levy made sexual advances to her after stopping her for speeding and then bringing her back to his office.
He says, I want to have sex with you. And I just put my head down. And then he said, do you hear me? He goes, I want to make love to you. And I just told him, I says, no, I says, I'm faithful. And then he goes, well, what would you think of me? And I told him that I thought it was a crummy thing of him to ask. And then he said, well, what would you say to me? And I told him he could have my license.
Despite the testimony, it should be noted that earlier this year, a grand jury found that there was insufficient evidence to indict Chief Levy on the charges lodged by the Humiston woman. Aaron Shepard. According to the hearing officer, no decision will be reached tonight. After he reviews the testimony, he will make his recommendations to the village board, and they range anything from dismissal to reprimand to even having the chief fired. And the village can either accept or reject those recommendations, Marcy.
Okay, Arnie, thank you. A female rabbi from Clifton Park has been refused admission for the second time to the all-male rabbinical assembly. 32-year-old Beverly Magidson failed to receive the 75% of the vote necessary to gain membership to the organization of 1,200 conservative rabbis. She garnered 230 yes votes to 99 no votes. Magidson's application was debated today during the Rabbinical Assembly's annual convention in Kiamisha Lake. It was voting day in 3 area school districts, and one proposed budget went down to defeat. Catskill's $7.5 million spending plan lost by just 37 votes, although a separate library budget was approved. Maurice Latimer was unopposed for a school board seat. The other available seat was won by Paul Peischer. In Schenectady County, Mohonasen School District voters said yes to a $9.8 million budget, as well as a bus purchase proposition. And the Brittenkill School District budget of $6.5 million was also approved. In both Mohonasen and Brittenkill, candidates for the school board ran unopposed. Coming up on Action News, 2 arrests in connection with the death of David Kennedy. But first, let's take a look at the winning lotto numbers. They are 15, 25, 26, 30, 35, 43, and the supplementary is 29. Stay with us.
Tonight's Action News is brought to you by Martin Aluminum, the area's oldest installer of aluminum and vinyl siding and trim.